Humans are considered the most advanced and intelligent creatures on the face of the earth, but even at that, humans have not always been the civilized, intelligent creatures that we are now. We had to go through stages in evolution. One of the important stages which we passed through as the early men was the Neanderthal stage, a very important time in human evolution, no doubt, but as early men still learning, Neanderthals were subject to doing crazy things. Welcome to Crazy History, where we bring you the craziest, weirdest facts from human history. Join us today as we look at the weird things that the Neanderthals did. They had surgeons. It's incredible what modern medicine can do. Heck, doctors can even perform full-face transplants now. But that's with the help of an anesthetic, very precise tools, and a lot of computers. Mankind didn't have any of that in the Stone Age, or even really have the basic knowledge of anatomy that came much later, but they were still performing surgery. Archaeologists have the proof too, and it's as bad as you think. Freiburg University archaeologists were working in France when they excavated a group of 7,000-year-old graves. Among the bodies was one belonging to a man who had been about 50 when he died, and he had 2 holes in his skull. The wounds were very deliberate and very clean, with none of the surrounding cracks and damage expected from a violent injury or accident. One of the holes was about 2.5 inches, the other around 3.5. Oh, it gets worse. Archaeologists say that the wounds were very clearly made at 2 different times, and that the man showed somewhere between 6 months and 2 years' worth of healing. Flint tools, which are actually sharper than steel tools, were likely used. They ate each other. Neanderthals weren't exactly foodies, but they still needed to eat. And there's no question about the fact Neanderthals ate each other. University of Valencia anthropologists discovered 10,000-year-old human bones in a cave on the coast of Spain that showed very distinct markings indicating human meat was on the menu. The evidence is striking and includes human bones with bite marks. They weren't the only ones either. According to The Guardian, archaeologists have been able to find that Neanderthals moved to Britain about 14,700 years ago and settled in Somerset. And they had perfected the art of butchering to get the most amount of meat possible. And they used the same techniques on the bones of men, women, and children that they did on animals. They made sacrifices. The idea of human sacrifice is one that makes for some uncomfortable thoughts about just what kind of people we are, and it's definitely nothing new. In 2007, archaeologists released news via Live Science of some disturbingly bizarre discoveries made when excavating graves dating back to about 27,000 years ago. One contained the remains of 3 young people, including one with congenital dysplasia, one that was lying face down, and another that was positioned to be reaching toward the hips of another. It was an odd burial, and they discovered other odd ones too. There were a handful of graves that contained multiple sets of remains, and many were remains of young people or those who showed signs of severe deformities. The fact that there were so many graves with multiple bodies suggests that human sacrifice was definitely a thing, and the bodies were placed like that on purpose. Why? It's impossible to tell exactly what the circumstances were, or who the unfortunate people chosen to be the sacrifices were. Evidence of human sacrifice has been discovered in an eerie number of places. Live Science reports that human sacrifices were discovered buried in a 4,000-year-old cemetery in China, and the practice continued into the Iron Age. They had dentists. Hate going to the dentist. Put it off as long as humanly possible. It's a cakewalk now, at least compared to what it used to be. It's entirely possible that death might have been a viable option instead of heading to a Neanderthal's dentist. According to discoveries made by the University of Bologna, dentistry was being practiced at least around 13,000 years ago, and it was about as horrible as expected, with ancient teeth showing signs that sharp stones were used to scrape out cavities and tissue. The really strange thing is that the process Neanderthal dentists use was very similar to modern dentistry. At least in Italy, cavities were cleaned out and then sealed with a black tar called bitumen. In 2012, archaeologists reported on a 6,500-year-old tooth discovered in Slovenia. The poor unfortunate owner had cracked the tooth, and it was filled with beeswax. Next time you start thinking about all the things you're thankful for, be sure and add Novocaine to the list. They drank and smoked during pregnancy. Science has come a long way in figuring out what's best for the human body. It wasn't even that long ago smoking and drinking while pregnant were viewed as being okay. So that same sort of medical knowledge in the Stone Age must have been very wrong, right? It seems so. In 2018, Washington University anthropologist Eric Trinkhaus published a paper on the strangeness that he saw in Stone Age remains. Trinkhaus picked 66 Stone Age skeletons from people who had lived between 10,000 and 100,000 years ago and who had visible deformities. Two-thirds of the diagnosed conditions were recorded as either rare or extremely rare. So, what's going on here? Trinkhaus found that it wasn't just about poor nutrition or a lack of medical knowledge. He found that many of the conditions were genetic, and that led him to the conclusion that small, close-knit communities of people living far, far away from others led to a fair amount of inbreeding, and that led to the high rates of severe deformities. But what's more shocking is that they also uncovered that when Neanderthals were pregnant, they still inhaled smoke when they stayed around fires, and they consumed substances closely related to present-day ethanol, which made them drunk. They died young. Here's the thing about kids. They're soft, squishy, and dumb. It's not surprising that for a lot of human history, childhood was one of the most statistically dangerous times of life. According to UC Santa Barbara anthropology professor Michael Gervin, if a late Stone Age person made it through childhood, they had a decent enough chance of seeing their 50th birthday and beyond. But earlier, it was very different. The majority of people died before they hit 30, and the switch came with advancements in tool-making and technology. According to Scientific American, it was only about 30,000 years ago people lived long enough to meet their grandkids, which was a huge deal. With the emergence of a grandparent generation, it's thought it not only afforded early humans the chance to pass down potentially life-saving information by word of mouth, but it also shifted some of the responsibilities onto a whole extra group of people, allowing younger folks the opportunity to do more than just eat, sleep, and die. That kicked progress into high gear, but only at the end of the Stone Age. Until then, yeah, you were probably going to die young. They had plagues. Everyone's familiar with the idea of the plague, especially the one that hit 14th century Europe and did a serious number on the entire population. That was bad, so just imagine when it hit 5,000 years earlier. According to the Technical University of Denmark, there were several strains of plague active at the end of the Stone Age and going into the Bronze Age. The plague covered Europe and Asia in what they described as pandemic proportions, wiping out entire civilizations. And we're talking about a lot of people. At the time, some settlements had as many as 20,000 residents living there. Many died, cities were abandoned, and the few survivors fled, taking the plague with them. While they stress that exactly what happened is still a mystery, they do say it's likely the plague led to a major collapse of Stone Age civilization, and given that the World Health Organization says bubonic plague has up to a 60% mortality rate if untreated, it killed a ton of people along the way. With all that has been said, what do you think about the Neanderthals now? Which of these practices was the strangest to you? Which other historical eras would you like us to talk about? Tell me your answers down in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also hit the bell as well so you don't miss any video, cause we have a lot more interesting things to come. See you soon.